Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Clara, and today I have the new mini sunset palette from NATASHA DENONA to review for you. And I do also have the full-size sunset palette from NATASHA DENONA, so I can do a full comparison for you guys with swatches. And I am also wearing them each on my eyes today. So this side is the mini sunset palette, and this side is the full sunset palette, so you guys will have to let me know which side you like better. Before we jump into this review, I wanted to mention that we are doing a giveaway of the new mini McGrath MTHRSHP palettes, and I will also leave a link to that if you would like to enter. All details on how to enter can be found in the Pat McGrath review video, but let's just jump right into the sunset palette review. This is $25, which is much cheaper than most of the NATASHA DENONA products, even though she also has other 5-pan eyeshadows, and the reason why is because this is actually much smaller than her normal 5-pans. It comes in a white plastic package with a clear plastic lid, and this doesn't have like a magnetic closure or like a latch or anything like that. It just kind of is held open by the force of the hinge resisting. So once you get past that point, it opens. There are 2 matte shades, and then the rest are shimmers. First, we have this kind of tan matte transition shade, which blended very well and was nice and pigmented. Next, we have this shimmer maroon color. It wasn't very pigmented, and it's also very hard in the pan, kind of like some of the new shimmer shades from the Tropic palette. If you haven't seen my review for that, I will leave a link here. Next, we have this medium dark brown matte shade. This is slightly warm in tone, but not as warm as most of the ones in the original sunset palette. The pigmentation on this was good, but I didn't find that it blended as well as most of her normal mattes. Next, we have this shimmer bronze shade, and this one is nice and creamy like her normal formula. I really did enjoy the consistency and the color of this one. Lastly, we have this shimmer champagne, which again is very nice and creamy and smooth like her traditional shimmer formula. Both of these two on the end I think were the highlights of the palette. The rest of the colors really didn't stand out to me very much in terms of like NATASHA DENONA kind of quality, just because I feel like normally her shadows are much better. So if you were buying this to kind of test out her brand and see if you would like it, I'm not really sure if this gives you a good representation. Also, the colors in this are all inspired by the sunset palette, but they are not exact dupes. And I feel like in the sunset palette it's much more like pigmented, more heavy on like the orange, the reds, and the yellows. This is a little bit more neutral, and also not as sparkly as the sunset palette. There are a lot of like glitter shades or very intense like shimmer shades, and this is much more like muted and subtle. I'm going to show you the swatches of the mini sunset palette and the full-size sunset palette side by side as we go into the demo. However, you should know I wasn't able to find like exact dupes in each of the palettes, so I just went with the color that was closest. So some of the finishes are different. Like I couldn't find a red shimmer in the sunset palette, so I used a red matte. First, I took the matte tan shade Guava from the mini sunset palette into the crease, and I blended that in. It blended really nicely. The closest matte transition shade dupe I could find from the sunset palette was actually much pinker and also a little bit lighter in tone, and that is Bermuda. That one I also blended into the crease, and it just blends so well. Next, I went in with the medium matte brown shade Dirty Mars to kind of deepen the transition. I did find this was quite pigmented, however, it was a little bit patchy when blending out, and also I did get just a hint of fallout with this shade. I was able to find a pretty close dupe in the medium matte brown Cyanide from the original sunset palette. However, Cyanide is just a little bit warmer, which is kind of in keeping with the sunset theme. It's quite an orange palette just in general. Next, I took the shimmer maroon shade Apollo, and I placed that on the outer third of the lid. This one didn't have quite the pigment or the oomph that I was hoping it would have. I do think if you built it up with a finger, it would be a little bit more intense. Just it wasn't quite the same quality as my normal NATASHA DENONA shimmers. There's no maroon shimmer shade in the original sunset palette, but there is this nice warm bright red shade that is a matte, and I used that on my other eye in the outer third. Even though the finishes are different, I do think that I prefer the matte red, just because the pigment and the blending and everything was so beautiful, and it gives it a little bit of an extra pop that the maroon shade just didn't have. This maroon shade also had a ton of fallout, which was really disappointing. In comparison, the matte red shade Panjin did not have any fallout. Next, I took the shimmer bronze shade Sunbeam, and I patted that in the center of my lid with a finger to get the most from it. I do feel like it's a beautiful kind of creamy bronze shade. It's not quite as intense as the dupe that I found from the original sunset palette. However, the shade Obad is a chroma crystal shade, So even though they both look a very similar bronze in the pan, the chroma crystals are more reflective, so it does give a kind of brighter gold kind of glitter sheen on it. Lastly, I went in with the shimmer champagne called Halo, and I placed that on the inner third of my eyes with a finger again to get the most out of the shadow, and I do think this is such a beautiful color. It was the most difficult for me to do because in the pan it looks very similar in tone to the shimmer bronzage, but on the eye bronzage is much darker, so I did have to go and lighten it with the kind of white, slightly shimmery shade called Ice Gold. And I feel like blended together, those two from the original Sunset palette do look very similar to Halo from the new mini palette. I hope that you guys will let me know which side you like better, and if you're more a fan of the original Sunset palette or the new mini palette. If you do also own the original Sunset palette, I would love to hear your feedback on that. Again, don't forget to subscribe and enter in our giveaway. I was also thinking that I would do like a Pat McGrath La Vie and Rose palette comparison with the Natasha Denona Lila palette, kind of in the same format as what I did today. If you guys are interested in seeing that, please let me know down in the comment section below. And also if you're interested in seeing any tutorials from the older palettes that I have, I would be happy to do that for you guys. As always, I hope that you guys are having a fabulous day, and I will talk to you again really soon. Bye guys!